Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the biggest building he had ever seen. The palace of Queen Zarathal rose into the purple sky like a mountain made of glass and silver. Nexus Prime was nothing like Earth. 2 suns hung in the sky, and the air smelled like rain mixed with flowers he could not name. He walked down the ramp wearing his best dress uniform. The blue fabric felt stiff against his skin, and the gold buttons caught the alien sunlight. 3 years of training had prepared him for this moment. Earth's first official meeting with the Galactic Council. Jake carried the hopes of 8 billion people in his briefcase. The spaceport buzzed with activity. Creatures he had only seen in classified reports moved past him. A group of tall beings with too many arms spoke in musical tones. Something that looked like a walking tree carried boxes. Twice its size. Flying machines shaped like teardrops moved through the air without making any sound. Jake had studied every species he might meet, but seeing them in person was different. His military training kicked in. He noted exits, counted potential threats, and measured distances. Old habits die hard, even for a diplomat. A voice spoke behind him. Ambassador Morrison. Jake turned to see a human woman in a crisp white uniform. She had short red hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "I'm Captain Lisa Hayes," she said. "Your military advisor. Good to meet you, Captain." Her grip was firm. "Ready for this? As ready as anyone can be for something that's never been done before," Lisa replied. She gestured toward the palace. "The Queen's escort is waiting." 3 vehicles approached them. They moved without wheels, floating a few inches above the ground. The lead vehicle was twice the size of the others and decorated with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The escort consisted of 6 guards, an armor that seemed to shift colors as they moved. Their helmets covered their faces completely. Could not tell what species they were. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The ride to the palace took 20 minutes through a city that defied physics. Buildings twisted into impossible shapes, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solid light. The streets were full of beings from across the galaxy, all going about their daily business. Jake studied everything. Tell reports were one thing, but seeing the real power of galactic civilization was something else. Earth cities looked like toys compared to this. The palace gates opened without anyone touching them. The escort vehicles glided through courtyards filled with plants that glowed softly in the alien twilight. Fountains shot streams of liquid that changed colors as they fell. They stopped at the main entrance. Doors 30 feet tall swung open silently. Jake and Lisa stepped out of their vehicle and followed the guards inside. The throne room was the size of a football stadium. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Pillars of what looked like frozen lightning supported the massive space. And at the far end, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystal, sat Queen Zara single quotes. She was 12 feet tall, even sitting down. Her skin changed colors like oil on water, shifting from blue to green to purple as she moved. 4 arms ending in delicate hands rested on the arms of her throne. Her face was almost human, but her eyes were solid gold with no visible pupils. Jake walked across the polished floor with Lisa beside him. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. He had practiced this moment 100 times, but his heart still pounded as they approached the most powerful being in this sector of the galaxy, 20 feet from the throne. Jake stopped and bowed exactly, as protocol demanded, not too deep, which would show weakness, not too shallow, which would show disrespect. Lisa followed his lead. "Your Majesty," Jake said. "I am Ambassador Jake Morrison, representing the planet Earth and the human species." "Queen." Zarotha leaned forward. When she spoke, her voice was like music played on instruments that did not exist on Earth. "Welcome, Ambassador Morrison. I have been curious about your species for some time." She stood up, and Jake had to tilt his head back to meet her gaze. Even prepared for her size, he felt small beside her. "Walk with me," the Queen said. She led them through corridors lined with artwork from 1,000 worlds. Jake recognized some pieces from his studies, but most were completely alien to him. The Queen moved with surprising grace for someone so large. They entered a smaller room. With chairs sized for different species, the Queen gestured for Jake and Lisa to sit. When she settled into her own chair, she leaned forward with interest. "Your species has caught the attention of the Galactic Council," she said. "This is unusual. Most civilizations require centuries of observation before invitation. We're honored by the opportunity," Jake replied. The Queen's golden eyes seemed to look right through him. "You understand what you're walking into?" Jake kept his expression neutral. "I understand that Earth has something the Council wants, or they wouldn't have invited us." The Queen made a sound that might have been laughter. "Honest. I like that." Her expression grew serious. "Several Council members view humanity as a threat. Your species advances too quickly. You adapt too easily. You do not follow expected patterns. Is that a problem? For some, yes. They prefer predictable neighbors." The Queen's forehands moved as she spoke. "I have studied your history, Ambassador. Humans have a talent for surviving impossible situations. This worries certain Council members." Jake felt Lisa tense beside him, but he kept his voice calm. "What kind of worries? The kind that lead to preemptive solutions?" The Queen stood up and walked to a window that showed the city below. "I want you to know that you have my protection while you're here. No harm will come to Earth's delegation under my roof." Jake stood up as well. He walked to the window and looked out at the alien city. After a moment, he turned to the Queen with a slight smile. "From who?" he asked. The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she made that sound again, definitely laughter this time. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador Morrison. Maybe both," Jake replied. "But Earth didn't send me here to hide behind someone else's protection." Queen's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. "No, I don't think they did." The next morning, Jake woke to the sound of alien birds singing outside his window. The guest quarters were larger than his apartment back on Earth. Everything was built for beings much bigger than humans. Even the bathroom sink required him to stand on his toes. Lisa knocked on his door at exactly 700 hours. She wore her dress uniform and carried a data pad filled with intelligence reports. "The council session starts in 2 hours," she said. "I've got updates on the major players." They walked through corridors filled with morning light that came from panels in the walls instead of windows. Jake had slept poorly. His dreams were full of golden eyes and voices that spoke in music. "Tell me what we're walking into," Jake said. Lisa pulled up files on her data pad. 12 species on the council, 3 big powers, 6 middle players, and 3 small ones who mostly follow the leaders. They entered a breakfast room where food from across the galaxy was laid out on tables. Jake stuck 2 items that looked familiar, some things that might have been fruit, bread that tasted like honey, water that was actually water. "The collective speaks for itself," Lisa continued. "Hive mind. Billions of individual bugs that think. As one, they're interested in Earth's biological diversity, want to add human genetics to their gene pool." Jake poured coffee from a pot that somehow knew exactly how he liked it. "Voluntary addition? The reports don't specify. But the collective doesn't usually ask permission for anything." They moved to a quiet corner where they could talk without being overheard. Their delegates were scattered around the room. Jake noted who sat with whom and who ate alone. "The synthesis is next," Lisa said. "Mechanical beings used to be organic, but uploaded themselves into machines thousands of years ago. They're fascinated by human creativity and problem solving. What do they want with it? To study it, copy it, add it to their databases?" Lisa scrolled through more files. "They see humans as software that needs to be preserved and analyzed." Watched a group of tall silver beings at a nearby table. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single machine. When one turned its head, the others did the same thing at exactly the same time. "The ethereals are the oldest," Lisa continued. "It's been around since before most current species evolved. They think of younger races as children who need guidance." Guidance toward what? Their version of perfection. They have very specific ideas about how civilization should develop. Earth doesn't fit their pattern. Jake finished his coffee and stood up. "Time to meet our new friends." The council chamber was even bigger than the Queen's throne room. 12 sections ringed a central floor, each designed for a different species. The human section was small but positioned where Jake could see everyone else's queen. Zarathel entered with a group of her advisors. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid metal. When she sat in her section, Jake noticed she had a clear view of his position. The first delegates to speak were from smaller species. They talked about trade routes and resource sharing, normal diplomatic business. Jake listened carefully to how they spoke and what they didn't say. Then the collective's representative stood up. It looked like a human-sized version of a praying mantis, but with too many joints in all the wrong places. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers around the room instead of its mouth. The newest potential member presents interesting opportunities, the collective said. Humans showed genetic diversity that could benefit all council species. We proposed immediate biological surveys of their population. Jake felt Lisa tense beside him, but he kept his face neutral. Around the chamber, other delegates murmured among themselves. The synthesis representative was next. It looked like a person made of chrome and glass. Light pulsed through tubes in its body as it moved. Human cognitive patterns are unique, it said in a voice like computer static. Their creativity algorithms could advance all mechanical civilizations. We require access to human neural networks for analysis. The ethereal delegate floated 3 feet above its chair. It looked like smoke in the shape of a person, constantly shifting and flowing. Young species require careful guidance, it said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Humans show dangerous independence. They must accept proper supervision before council membership. Jake stood up when the chamber fell quiet. All eyes turned toward the small human section. "Thank you for the warm welcome," he said. His voice carried clearly in the vast space. Earth appreciates the council's interest in humanity. He walked to the center of the chamber where speakers traditionally stood. The polished floor reflected the lights from 12 different sections. "I've listened to your concerns about my species," Jake continued. "You're worried that humans advance too quickly, that we don't follow expected patterns. We might be unpredictable." He turned slowly, making eye contact with delegates around the chamber. "You're absolutely right." Murmurs broke out in several sections. Jake waited for quiet before continuing. "Humans do advance quickly. We've gone from horse-drawn carts to space flight in less than 200 years. We do break patterns. Our history is full of people who refuse to do things the way they'd always been done." The collective's representative clicked its mandibles. Together, the sound echoed through the chamber. "And yes, we're unpredictable. We have this habit of surviving things that should kill us, of finding solutions where none should exist, of refusing to quit when any reasonable species would give up." Jake smiled at the assembled delegates. "The question isn't whether humans will change the balance of power in this galaxy. We will. The question is whether you want us to do it as friends or as strangers." The chamber erupted in voices from 12 different species, some angry, some excited, some worried. Jake stood. In the center of it all, calm and confident. Queen Zarathel watched from her section with growing interest. This human was not what she had expected. He wasn't asking for acceptance. He was offering partnership on his own terms. The session ended with no decisions made. As delegates filed out, Jake noticed the patterns. The big 3 powers huddled together in urgent conversation. The smaller species watched nervously from the sides. Lisa joined him as they left the chamber. "Think that went well?" Jake looked back at the 3 major powers still deep in discussion. "They're scared." "That's good. Scared beings make dangerous choices." "True, but they also make mistakes." Jake headed toward their quarters. "Humans are very good at taking advantage of mistakes." That evening, Queen Zarathel requested a private dinner with the human delegation. As they ate food that actually tasted like Earth cuisine, she asked the question Jake had been waiting for. "Are you really doing here, Ambassador?" Jake set down his fork and met her golden gaze, changing the rules of the game. The council meeting 3 days later felt different from the start. Jake sensed the change as soon as he entered the chamber. The big 3 powers sat closer together. Their advisors moved between sections like they were planning something. Smaller species looked nervous. Queen Zarathal caught his eye as he took his seat. She gave him the slightest nod. Her intelligence network had been busy. Jake had spent the previous evening reading her reports about secret meetings in private communications between the major powers. The collective's representative stood first. Its insect-like head turned toward Jake with mechanical precision. Council has reached a decision about humanity's application for membership, it announced. We welcome Earth into our community, but certain conditions must be met. Jake kept his face blank. Lisa shifted beside him, her hand moving closer to her datapad. First condition, the collective continued. Human military forces must be disbanded. Council peacekeepers will provide security for Earth's solar system. Murmurs ran through the smaller species sections. Jake noticed several delegates exchanging worried glances. The synthesis representative rose next. Light pulsed through its chrome body as it spoke. Second condition. All human research and development must be supervised by Council scientists. This will ensure proper safety protocols and prevent dangerous discoveries. The ethereal delegate floated higher above its chair. Smoky form shifted colors as it delivered the final blow. Third condition. Earth will accept a council governing body to guide human civilization toward proper development. This body will have final authority over all major decisions affecting your species. Jake stood up slowly. The chamber fell silent. He walked to the center of the floor, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, he said. His voice carried to every section. You want humanity to give up our military, our scientific independence, and our right to govern ourselves. These are standard integration protocols, the collective replied. All new members undergo similar transitions. Jake looked around the chamber at the other species. Is that true? Did all of you surrender your sovereignty to join the council? Several smaller delegates looked uncomfortable. One of them, a being that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard, actually shook its head slightly. I thought so, Jake said. Turn back to the big three powers. You're not offering membership, you're demanding surrender. Your species requires guidance, the ethereal delegate said. Humans are too unpredictable to be trusted with full independence. Too dangerous, added the synthesis representative. Too chaotic, the collective agreed. Jake nodded thoughtfully. You know what? You're absolutely right. Humans are unpredictable, dangerous, and chaotic. We're also incredibly stubborn when people try to push us around. He walked toward the collective section. You want to study human biology? Here's something to consider. Every attempt to conquer or control humanity has failed. Ask the Romans, ask the Mongols, ask anyone who thought they could break us. He turned toward the synthesis section. You want to analyze human creativity? Try analyzing this. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and natural disasters that should have wiped us out. We don't just survive. We learn, adapt, and come back stronger. Finally, he faced the ethereal delegate. And you want to guide our development? The last species that tried to guide humanity was our own. Half of human history is us rebelling against kings, emperors, and dictators who thought they knew what was best for us. Jake returned to the center of the chamber. So here's my counteroffer. The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Counteroffers were not part of normal council procedure. I accept your conditions, Jake said. The noise stopped instantly. Even. Queen Zerotho looked shocked. All three conditions, Jake continued. Earth will disband its military. We'll accept council supervision of our research. We'll even accept a governing body to guide our development. The collective's representative clicked its mandibles in what might have been satisfaction. The synthesis delegate's lights pulsed. Faster, the ethereal shifted colors toward something like pleasure. However, Jake said, I have one small condition of my own. The collective spoke first. New members do not make conditions. This one does, Jake replied. It's very simple. Before Earth accepts these terms, I want a demonstration that the Council can actually enforce them. He pulled out his datapad and activated the holographic display. A star map appeared in the air above the chamber floor. I challenge the combined forces of the collective, the synthesis, and the ethereals to a wargame simulation. If you can defeat Earth's military in direct combat, we'll accept all your conditions without argument. The chamber exploded in voices. Several smaller species delegates stood up. Queen Zarathal leaned forward in her chair. If we lose, Jake continued over the noise, Earth will become a protectorate state under council authority. Our people will. Accept whatever terms you decide. The synthesis representative processed this for several seconds, and if you win, then Earth joins the council as a full member with all the rights and privileges of the founding species. The ethereal delegate's smoky form darkened. This is unprecedented. New species do not make demands. New species usually don't have much choice, Jake agreed. But here's the thing about humans. We always have a choice. We can accept your terms and become your servants. Or we can reject them and go back to Earth with a warning about what the Council really offers. He gestured toward the smaller species sections. I think some of your current members might be interested in hearing about this conversation. Several delegates in the minor species sections nodded agreement. The balance of power in the chamber was shifting, and everyone could feel it. The challenge cannot be refused, Queen Zarathal said suddenly. All eyes turned toward her, according to the founding charter. Any species requesting membership has the right to trial by combat if they dispute the terms offered. The collective's representative turned toward her section. That law has not been invoked in 3,000 years, because no species has been desperate enough to try it, the Queen replied. Humanity appears to be different. Jake smiled at her. We prefer to think of it as confident. The three major powers huddled together in urgent discussion. Voices rose and fell in languages Jake didn't recognize. Finally, the collective's representative turned back to face him. We accept your challenge, it announced. The war game will commence in 7 standard days. You will have access to all current intelligence about our forces. We will provide the same courtesy regarding Earth's military capabilities. Fair enough, Jake said. One more thing. The simulation will be run on neutral systems with independent monitoring, agreed. Jake walked back toward his section. As he passed Queen Zarathal's area, she spoke quietly enough that only he could hear. You realize they have you outnumbered 50-1? Jake paused without turning around. Has anyone ever told you the story of David and Goliath? No, remind me to tell you after we win. Jake spent the next 3 days in Queen Zarathal's private study, surrounded by data files and tactical displays. The Queen had given him access to her empire's military intelligence, something that surprised even her own advisors. Why are you helping me? Jake asked, as he studied fleet compositions on a holographic screen. Your empire isn't exactly allies with Earth. The Queen's 4 arms moved across different control panels simultaneously, because I'm curious to see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Which one are we? She laughed. That musical sound he was getting used to. I haven't decided yet. Lisa entered the study, carrying a secure communication device. Her face was grim. Jake, we've got a problem. I just spoke with Admiral Clark back on Earth. Jake looked up from the tactical display. What's wrong? Our fleet numbers. The Council has access to all our public military records. They know exactly how many ships we have, what weapons we carry, even our deployment patterns. The Queen manipulated her display to show comparative force strengths. The numbers were not encouraging. 300 human ships against 15,000 alien vessels. The collective alone has more dreadnoughts than our entire fleet, Lisa continued. Add the synthesis and ethereal forces, and we're looking at impossible odds. Jake walked to the window that overlooked the palace gardens. Alien creatures moved through plants that changed colors as they approached. Everything here seemed designed to be beautiful, but also to show power. Tell me about human military history, he said without turning around. Lisa looked confused. Sir, Thermopylae, the Alamo, the Battle of Britain. What do they have in common? They were all desperate last stands against overwhelming odds. And Lisa thought for a moment. The defenders were fighting for something more important than their own lives. Jake nodded. Queen Zarathal, what does your military teach about fighting humans? The Queen pulled up files from her intelligence network. Our analysts classify your species as chaotic. Human tactics don't follow standard patterns. Use strategies that no sane military would attempt, such as suicide attacks that serve no strategic purpose, retreats that turn into ambushes, sacrificing valuable units to achieve minor objectives. She paused. Your willingness to take casualties? That would break other species' morale. Jake returned to the tactical display. Show me the simulation parameters. The Queen activated a three-dimensional map of space. Colored dots represented different fleets. Blue for humans, red for the collective, silver for the synthesis, and gold for the ethereals. Standard engagement rules, she explained. Both sides start at opposite ends of the combat zone. Victory goes to the side that eliminates enemy command structures or forces surrender. What are the terrain features? Asteroid fields, gas clouds, electromagnetic storms. The usual obstacles that complicate space combat. Jake studied the map. For several minutes, Lisa watched him work. Recognizing the look he got when formulating a battle plan, they're expecting us to fight like them, Jake said finally. Big ships in formation, trading fire until one side breaks. That's how space combat works, Lisa replied. For them, maybe. Jake manipulated the display to zoom in on specific areas. But humans didn't get to the top of Earth's food chain by fighting fair. He turned to Queen Zarathal. Your people conquered this sector through superior technology and overwhelming force. How do you deal with enemies who can't match your strength? We crush them quickly before they can adapt, right? Because in your experience, weaker enemies eventually surrender when faced with impossible odds. Jake smiled. Humans are really bad at knowing when we're supposed to quit. Over the next 4 days, Jake worked with Lisa to develop their strategy. They requested specific intelligence about enemy ship capabilities, weapon ranges, and tactical doctrines. The Council provided everything, confident that raw information wouldn't help against such overwhelming numbers. Queen Zarathal found Jake in the study late one evening, staring at personnel files on his datapad. What are you reading? She asked. Crew records from our fleet. Ages, experience levels, family situations. Jake scrolled through pages of names and faces. The Council sees numbers, ships, weapons, statistics. But every human ship out there is crewed by people with reasons to fight. The Queen settled into a chair beside him. Tell me about them. Jake pulled up a file. Captain Rodriguez on the destroyer Phoenix. She's got 3 kids back on Earth. Lieutenant Commander Park on the Cruiser Defiance lost his brother in a mining accident last year. Commander Washington on the battleship Resolve just got married 6 months ago. Do you know all your ship commanders personally? Most of them. Human fleets are small enough that we actually know each other. Jake closed the files. The Council. Species have millions of ships and billions of crew members. They can afford to lose thousands of vessels in a single battle. Humans cannot. No. Every ship we lose is a tragedy. Every person who dies has a name, a family, a story. Jake met her golden gaze. Oh, but that's also our strength. When you're fighting for people you know, when surrender means watching them die, you find ways to win that shouldn't be possible. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. The simulation begins tomorrow. Are you ready? Jake stood up and walked to the window. Alien City sparkled with lights that pulsed in patterns he was starting to recognize. Somewhere out there, the combined fleets of 3 galactic powers were preparing to demonstrate why resistance was futile. Queen Zarathal, can I ask you something? Of course. In all your empire's history, have you ever fought an enemy that refused to surrender even when they were completely beaten? She considered the question. No. Most species recognize when continued resistance is pointless. Then tomorrow is going to be educational for both of us. Jake turned back to face her. Because humans have a saying. It's not over until it's over. And what does that mean? Jake smiled. It means that as long as one human ship is still shooting, we haven't lost yet. The next morning, Jake and Lisa reported to the simulation center. The facility was massive, filled with computers that could model entire star systems. Representatives from all 12 council species gathered to watch the demonstration. As Jake took his position at the command console, Queen Zarathal approached him one final time. "Last chance to reconsider," she said quietly. "No one would blame you for accepting their terms." Jake activated his communication link to the human fleet. 300 ships reported ready for battle. "Your Majesty, there's something you need to understand about my species. We didn't become the dominant life form on Earth by backing down. From fights we couldn't win, the simulation began." On screens around the chamber, 15,000 alien ships advanced toward 300 human vessels. The odds were 50 to 1. By every rational calculation, the battle should be over in minutes. Jake opened a channel to all human ships. "This is Ambassador Morrison. Everyone knows the stakes. Everyone knows the odds. Everyone knows what happens if we lose." He looked around the chamber at the assembled alien delegates, then back at his display. "So let's show them what happens when you corner a human." The first phase of the simulation lasted exactly 4 minutes. Jake watched as half the human fleet disappeared from his tactical display. 75 ships destroyed by the opening alien barrage. The aliens had opened fire at maximum range with overwhelming firepower in the observation chamber. Several council delegates nodded with satisfaction. This was proceeding exactly as expected. "Human fleet is scattering," announced the simulations. "Computer formation, integrity lost." Queen Zarathal watched Jake's face for signs of panic or despair. Instead, she saw him smile. "Phase 1 complete," Jake said into his communication system. "All ships execute Thunder Run protocol." On the tactical display, the remaining human ships split into dozens of small groups. Instead of retreating or trying to regroup, they accelerated directly toward the alien formations. The collectives. Fleet Commander spoke through the simulation system. "Human vessels are attempting suicide runs. Maintain formation and eliminate them as they approach." But the human ships didn't behave like normal suicide attacks. They moved in random patterns, constantly changing direction and speed. When alien fire destroyed one ship, the others in its group scattered in different directions. "What are they doing?" asked the synthesis representative. Lisa watched the tactical display with growing excitement. "They're not trying to win a traditional space battle. They're turning this into something else entirely." The first human ship reached the collective's formation. Instead of ramming the largest vessel, it targeted a small communications relay. The explosion was tiny compared to the massive alien fleet, but the effect was immediate. Collective. Ships lost coordination with their hive mind. "Clever," Queen Zarathal murmured. More human ships reached their targets. Each one aimed for specific systems rather than trying to cause maximum damage. Communication arrays, sensor networks, command and control systems. The aliens began losing their ability to coordinate their overwhelming numbers. "Human tactics are illogical," the ethereal fleet commander announced. "They sacrifice valuable ships for minor objectives." Jake opened a channel to his remaining forces. Second wave, execute Hornet's Nest. The next group of human ships didn't target the alien fleets directly. Instead, they dove into the asteroid fields and gas clouds that dotted the combat zone. Within minutes, they had disappeared from enemy sensors. "Where did they go?" demanded the collective commander. The answer came when alien ships started exploding without warning. The humans had turned the asteroids into weapons, using mining charges to create debris fields that tore through alien formations. The gas clouds became hiding places for ambush attacks. "This is not standard space combat doctrine," the synthesis commander protested. Jake responded over the open channel. "You're right, this is human combat doctrine." The third wave of human ships executed the most audacious move yet. 20 vessels accelerated at maximum speed toward the center of the alien formation, but instead of attacking, they activated every electronic warfare system they had. Suddenly, the aliens couldn't tell friend from foe. Their own ships began firing on each other as human jamming systems turned their advanced targeting computers against them. "Impossible," said the ethereal commander. "Our systems are hardened against such attacks." "Against attacks by other civilized species," Jake replied. "Humans specialize in uncivilized warfare." Queen Zarathal realized what she was witnessing. The humans weren't trying to win a traditional battle. They were systematically destroying the aliens' ability to fight as a coordinated force. The aliens had 15,000 ships, but they were designed to work together. Remove their coordination, blind their sensors, disrupt their communications. And those 15,000 ships became 15,000 separate targets by the simulation's first hour. The alien advantage had dropped from 50 to 1 down to 20 to 1, not through superior firepower, but through superior chaos. Human fleet has lost 60% of its forces, the computer announced. Alien fleet has lost 30% of its combat effectiveness, Jake countered. The difference was crucial. The humans expected to lose ships. The aliens expected to win quickly and cleanly. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system. Phoenix here. We're down to our last missiles, but we've taken out 3 collective command ships. Acknowledged, Phoenix. Execute Alamo Protocol. Queen Zerothal had learned enough about human history to understand that reference. The Alamo was a battle where every defender died, but their sacrifice inspired others to victory. Rodriguez's ship accelerated toward the largest collective vessel. But instead of ramming it, she activated her ship's self-destruct system at the last moment. The explosion created an electromagnetic pulse that disabled dozens of nearby alien ships. Madness, whispered the collective representative. Heroism, Jake corrected. The pattern repeated across the battlefield. Human ships that were too damaged to continue fighting became weapons themselves. Each sacrifice was calculated to cause maximum disruption to alien operations. By the second hour, something unprecedented was happening. The aliens were starting to retreat. This is unacceptable, the synthesis commander announced. We are withdrawing to regroup. Negative, Jake broadcast on all frequencies. No one leaves until this is finished. The remaining human ships, fewer than 50 now, formed a defensive line between the aliens and the edge of the combat zone. They couldn't stop the aliens from leaving, but they could make it cost something. You cannot prevent our withdrawal with such small numbers, the ethereal commander said. Watch us, replied Commander Washington from the battleship Resolve. The humans had one more surprise. As the alien fleets moved toward the edge of the zone, they ran into the mines and traps that the first wave of human ships had planted hours earlier. The aliens found themselves trapped in a minefield of their own, making every route out of the combat zone was blocked by hidden explosives and ambush positions. You planned this from the beginning, Queen Zerothal said with growing amazement. Humans are very good at making plans, Jake replied. We're even better at adapting when those plans go wrong. The simulation reached its climax when the alien commanders made a crucial mistake, frustrated by their inability to crush the human resistance. They ordered all remaining ships to concentrate their fire on the last human vessels. It was exactly what Jake had been waiting for. As 15,000 alien ships bunched together for the final assault, the last human ship executed its final mission. Commander Washington's voice crackled through the speakers. Resolve to all ships. It's been an honor serving with you. The battleship Resolve detonated its entire payload of nuclear weapons in the center of the alien formation. The explosion was so massive that it registered as a small star on the simulation sensors. When the light faded, the tactical display showed a very different picture. The alien fleet was gone, not destroyed, but scattered and broken. Their command structure was eliminated, their coordination was destroyed, and their will to fight was shattered. Jake stood up from his command console and faced the stunned council delegates. Human victory by elimination of enemy command and control capability. The chamber was completely silent. 15,000 ships defeated by 300, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through sheer human stubbornness and the willingness to turn any situation into a weapon. Queen Zerothal broke the silence. How? Jake smiled. Because we've been fighting impossible odds since we lived in caves. We've never learned how to quit. The council chamber remained silent for nearly 5 minutes after the simulation ended. 12 species stared at tactical displays that showed the impossible. 300 human ships had defeated 15,000 alien vessels through methods that defied every rule of civilized warfare. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. His uniform was wrinkled from hours at the command console, but his voice was steady. According to the terms of our agreement, Earth now qualifies for full council membership with all rights and privileges. The collective's representative was the first to speak. Its insect-like head turned toward Jake with mechanical precision. The simulation parameters were flawed. Human tactics were not legitimate military strategy. Really? Jake pulled up the tactical replay on the chamber's main display. Which rule did we break? Used only the weapons and ships you approved. We fought within the designated combat zone. We achieved victory through elimination of enemy command capability. The synthesis representative's chrome body pulsed with agitated light patterns. Your methods were chaotic. It's unpredictable. Not rational military doctrine. You're absolutely right, Jake agreed. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and irrational. Well, they were also effective. He gestured toward the smaller species sections. I think our new colleagues might be interested in learning these methods. Several delegates from minor species leaned forward with obvious interest. The bear lizard creature from earlier actually stood up. Ambassador Morrison, it said in a voice like gravel, would humanity be willing to share these tactical innovations? 3 major powers reacted instantly. The collective's representative clicked its mandibles in agitation. The synthesis delegate's lights flashed angry red. The ethereal's smoky form darkened to almost black. New members do not form military alliances, the ethereal said sharply. Jake smiled, but full members do. And you just agreed that Earth qualifies for full membership. Queen Zarathal watched the exchange with growing amusement. This human was doing exactly what she had hoped. He wasn't just winning admission to the council, he was reshaping it. There is another matter to discuss, Jake continued. During our preparation, we discovered some interesting facts about council history. He activated his datapad and knew. Information appeared on the chamber displays: financial records, trade agreements, military deployment schedules. The 3 major powers have been coordinating their policies for the past 2 centuries. They vote together, trade together, and share military intelligence. They've essentially formed a ruling oligarchy within the council, the smaller species. Delegates began murmuring among themselves. Several looked angry. Others looked frightened. This violates the council's founding principles, the bear lizard delegate said. Equal representation for all member species. Technically, yes, Jake agreed. But who is going to challenge them? They control the majority of military force in this sector. He paused to let that sink in. Until now. The implications hit the chamber like a physical force. Earth wasn't just joining the council as another minor member. They were offering an alternative to the existing power structure. The collective representative stood abruptly. This is unacceptable. The stability of this sector depends on strong leadership. Whose leadership? Jake asked. You've been making decisions for everyone else without asking their opinions? Some people might call that tyranny. Queen Zarathal decided it was time to make her position clear. She rose from her chair, her 12-foot frame commanding attention. The Veltar Empire formally recognizes Earth's right to full council membership, she announced. We also propose a review of current council voting procedures to ensure equal representation. The chamber erupted in voices. 6 smaller species immediately voiced support for the Queen's proposal. 2 others remained silent but looked thoughtful. Only the 3 major powers objected. Cannot restructure the council based on one simulation, the synthesis representative protested. We're not restructuring anything, Jake replied. We're enforcing existing rules that you've been ignoring. He walked toward the collective section. You wanted to study human biology. Here's what you should understand. Humans evolved as pack hunters. We worked together to bring down prey much larger than ourselves. He turned toward the synthesis section. You wanted to analyze human creativity? Try analyzing this. We don't just solve problems. We turn problems into opportunities. Finally, he faced the ethereal delegate, and you wanted to guide human development. The thing about humans is that we've never needed guidance. We've always found our own way. Jake returned to the center of the chamber. So here's what's going to happen. Earth joins the council as a full member. The smaller species get equal representation in council decisions. and the three major powers learn to share authority. And if we refuse? The collective asked. Jake's smile was cold. Then Earth withdraws its application and returns home. First, we share our tactical innovations with every species that wants them. I wonder how long your dominance would last if everyone else could fight like humans. The threat was clear. The major powers could accept change, or they could face revolution. Queen Zarathal spoke into the tense silence. The vote will be held tomorrow. Species will have 24 hours to consider their positions. As the session ended, delegates scattered to urgent private meetings. The smaller species huddled together, clearly excited about the possibility of real representation. The major powers retreated to their own sections for damage control. Jake and Lisa walked back to their quarters. Accompanied by Queen Zarathal, the corridors that had seemed intimidating a week ago now felt familiar. You realize what you've done? The Queen asked. Started a revolution? Changed the balance of power in this entire sector? Some people will call you a hero. Others will call you a threat to galactic stability? Jake stopped walking and turned to face her. Your Majesty, remember when you offered to protect Earth's envoy? Yes. I told you then that humans don't need protection. We need partners. Jake gestured toward the chamber they had just left. Those three powers have been ruling through intimidation for centuries. Intimidation only works on people who are afraid to fight back. And humans are not afraid to fight back. Humans are afraid of a lot of things. Death. Failure. Letting down the people we care about. But we've never been afraid of a fair fight. The Queen laughed. Fair fight? You were outnumbered 50-1, exactly, finally. Some decent odds. The next day, the Council voted on Earth's membership and the proposed reforms. The result was decisive. 9 species voted in favor, including Queen Zarothal's empire. Only the 3 major powers voted against. Jake stood before the assembled council as the results were announced. Earth was now a full member with equal voting rights. More importantly, the Council's power structure had been permanently altered. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Morrison, Queen Zarathal said formally. Earth's representative may take his seat. As Jake walked to the newly designated Earth section, the bear lizard delegate approached him. Ambassador, about those tactical innovations you mentioned? I'll have my military advisor set up training sessions next week, Jake replied. The collective representative overheard this exchange. You're going to arm every minor species with human warfare techniques? Jake settled into his chair and looked around the chamber at his new colleagues. Some were allies, some were potential enemies, but all of them were now equals. Not arm them, he said. Teach them. There's a difference. Humans believe that everyone has the right to defend themselves. He smiled at the 3 major powers. Even against people who think they know what's best for everyone else. Queen Zarathal took her own seat and called the session to order. As the first item of business under the new structure began, she caught Jake's eye and nodded slightly. The human had done exactly what he promised. He had changed the rules of the game. And in doing so, he had given every species in the council something they had almost forgotten they could have. Hope.